This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Greetings, and welcome back to another episode of We Are Starfleet, engaging in conversation about Starfleet Academy Season 1. I'm your captain this week, Ian Buckley, and today we're talking about Episode 4, Vox in Excelso. And joining me to discuss this episode this week is my co-host Craig McKenzie and very special guest Violet Hammond. How are you two?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Every single time I mispronounce your name, I want to throw myself out the window, and I did it again just now.
I'm used to you American dogs mispronouncing my name.
It's not like Greg, it's Craig.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you American infidels are always mispronouncing my name anyway.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Don't lump me in with that.
You guys invented the language. You can tell me how to pronounce your words.
That's it.
I took the note once, and I've never gotten it wrong since, as far as I know.
I, on the other hand, regularly get things wrong until accumulated shame reaches a point where my body physically can't continue to make the same mistake. It's super healthy.
Oh, it's excellent. Yeah, it's fantastic for you.
Don't worry about those lumps on the back of your neck. They're nothing to worry about.
Don't worry about the spots appearing in my vision. Don't worry about any of it. How is everyone this week?
Good.
Cold, snowy.
Yeah. Cold, yeah. We've got a major snowstorm going on in the U.S. today, so lots and lots of fun. Just a timestamp when we recorded this.
Yes.
We'll hold out for the length of time.
Don't even.
Yeah, we'll see. If not, we're not prepared. So
yeah, totally.
All right. So episode 4 of season 1, we've got another school-centered episode, even though the ship is back in space this week for the first time since episode 1. Just to sort of give a big picture overview, this episode mostly concerns Jaden and his background, as well as the overall kind of state of Klingon affairs post-burn, which is, I think, the first time we've really touched on what befell the Klingons after the burn. I don't really think we gave much attention to it in Discovery, and in this week's episode, Jaden faces news that several Klingon houses, including his families, are on the brink of catastrophe after a transport ship in space suffers an uncertain, disastrous fate. And really the central issue of the episode is how best to help the Klingons, not just in this specific crisis, but overall as the species finds itself in crisis. And they struggle to find a way to get the Klingons essentially to help themselves in this time of peril. And we also, through the course of the episode, get greater insight into Jaden's background and how he feels about his Klingon identity and how he fits into both Starfleet and into his cultural identity. How did we feel about this week's episode? Craig, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I liked this episode a lot, actually. I think this is the best of what we've seen so far. It's fully leaning into the Academy premise. Even though we're not seeing a lot of classes, I think the framing device of a debate competition is exactly what you want in a university set show. It also allows a natural in for people to express their views and opinions and to debate them. I think it's a really clever way of making that happen in a way that is forced but also perfectly in keeping with the setup. It's not that they're all just sitting having a structured debate and it's supposed to be an unstructured debate that's engineered to be a structured debate. So that really works. It works much better than let's have a structured debate and call it a diplomatic negotiation in front of the school kids that we had in the second episode. So it's a much more natural way of doing it. Plus, like I say, it's a great college thing. So really liked this episode. I think it says a lot of interesting things about Jaden, a character that we haven't seen much of. And in fact, I dismissed him a little bit as, he's a Klingon, but a pacifist, how clever. But the way that they actually enrich that and explore it in this episode is actually very clever. And I'm looking forward to talking in detail about it. So yeah, thumbs up in this episode for me.
Cool. How about you, Vi?
You should talk about your views on the season so far as well, since you haven't been here.
I do want to get your overall thoughts on the show so far. It's definitely a unique premise compared to Star Trek shows of the past, even though it's an oft discussed one. So how have you been enjoying it so far?
Really like the show. I will say I have liked each episode more and more as they go, which means that to answer your first question, this is definitely my favorite episode that I've watched so far. I think each episode gets stronger, which is a really nice, hopeful way of viewing the rest of the season. If each episode gets stronger, then by the end, this is probably going to be one of the better modern Star Trek shows for sure. I feel emotionally compromised by that Star Trek 60 logo every time it pops up at the beginning. So I feel like I'm already coming into it feeling all of this warm nostalgia, and I constantly talk about how Star Trek means me and my dad. Whenever I talk about Star Trek, it's me and my dad sitting on the couch
Me
watching
too.
Star Trek. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I always feel like Star Trek is a warm hug for me, and I think this show makes me feel that lovely, homey feeling. I think that the school premise, even though we didn't get a lot of it in the first 2 episodes, has been great in the last 3. I really loved all the pranks in the 3rd episode. I thought it was so much fun. And then this episode, I really loved. If Andy Williams was here, he'd be saying this episode is like my bread and butter, my sweet spot as far as talking about mental health and generational trauma. All the things that we dig into in this episode are things that I love talking about and I love exploring. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed this episode.
Yeah, I think this episode has done an excellent job of what we were wishing episode 2 and I think episode 1 were doing more of, which is really fully embrace the school premise and embrace this enormous set that you guys built and occupy, learning as I have over the course of the season more about the set, that it is an actual set and that it's huge and that it's supposedly the largest set ever constructed for or ever used for a Star Trek series. I mean, that's interesting. That tells me that they are committed to using it and being present on it a lot, which is great. I want to see a lot of these stories that feel like they fully embrace the school premise. I don't know about you guys, but the sort of speech and debate activity in high school was one that I gravitated towards. Big shock. I like talking. I like arguing. I don't know if you guys participated in speech and debate in primary school at all.
Wasn't really a thing in the UK, in Scotland anyway.
I was in the debate club and I went to meets and stuff. It was very, very dorky. And to me, it really speaks to, this is a relatable school experience. There were some pranks pulled in school. There were some legendary, senior pranks of years past that the school still talked about and that sort of stuff. But prank wars, that sort of thing, I didn't really have anything to latch onto in my personal experience last week. But this week I was like, I get this. As dorky and uncomfortably, awkwardly structured as it is, that is how it is sometimes in these sorts of classes and activities. And so I found a lot to relate to, and I really appreciated the added depth that we're getting to Jaden. We're getting more Klingon in this post-burn world lore. I feel bad for them, man. The Romulans lost their home planet, and the Klingons lost theirs. And we've really sort of reset the table as far as where a lot of these familiar Star Trek races stand in the universe of the 32nd century. So I found all that stuff very compelling. I liked how Chancellor Ake's kind of B story supported the main thrust of the episode and how everything came together at the end. That felt very classic, original series and TNG Trek, that kind of A and B story that are dealing with similar thematic ground, and they kind of come together at the end. That felt like a very satisfying way to approach a Star Trek set in a school with a lot of young adults. All the interpersonal conflict felt believable and justified. Jaden's attitude was understandable. I think everything, certainly by the end of the episode, was explained too in terms of his backstory and where he was coming from in terms of his family. I think like Craig, you said, it was very clever overall, and I agree. I think thumbs up for this episode for me as well.
Yeah, loved it.
Vi, I don't remember, were you a Star Trek Voyager watcher as well?
I have not seen every episode, but I definitely watched it.
Okay, so, the Doctor is back in Starfleet Academy as a regular, featured character, and he has quite a bit to do this week and in the weeks to come.
Competition for some reason, because that's what Chief Medical Officer does,
yes.
isn't it?
Right. Yes. So this is where I'm going with this. Like, what do we think about the Doctor, A, being involved in this story at all, but B, given that he is, how do we think about how he was employed?
He runs the Opera Society and the Debate Society, apparently.
He just can't keep his mouth shut. Well, listen, I love Robert Picardo. I'll happily watch him do anything in this show and in all shows. But yeah, to be honest, my brain went to a very business place in terms of, okay, we didn't want to expand the payroll to get another actor, so we'll just throw him in for this story. That I think is probably the business explanation for why this character is leading the Debate Society. That might sound very jaded, but that was my first thought. I think he did a great job, though. I think that the compassion for Jaden that he showed was very commendable from a teaching standpoint. But he also didn't let him off the hook. Like, even though he was clearly having a panic attack that first time he's at the podium, I think that he was going to make him go through it, which is also a very educational thing. But I did like the way that he handled the society in terms of how the debates were structured, the topics, how even though he didn't want to keep giving Caleb the point, it was obviously Caleb's points. I think that it felt very realistic in terms of a teaching experience.
Yeah, I think how he conducted the class, I think it is a class essentially that he's teaching. I think they explain his passion for it through referring back to experience. Like, if an audience watched Voyager and watched those episodes in the latter days of that show where the Doctor is, coming into his own and literally arguing for his own rights, I think you understand why he has a passion for the subject matter. But as far as why he specifically is teaching this class, it's a little hand wavy. He falls in many respects into the same kind of category as Ake is. Here is one of the few entities, besides a Trill, who has the perspective of being able to remember not just time a little bit before the burn, but going all the way back to, Voyager's era. And maybe they just chalk it up to, you've accumulated enough life experience to teach all these classes if you want. Like, just take your pick. You can teach all of it.
Yeah.
It does kind of feel like the academy faculty is about 4 people, though, doesn't it?
Yes. That's where my payroll issue comes from.
Yeah, I think that really does speak to the issue Vi brought up, which is that I really hope that we break out of this a little bit. Maybe this is something they can work towards in season 2. Is I'd really love to see, even if it's not every single week, like, give us a colorful cast of teacher characters. Give us a real sense that there are multiple classes that aren't just being taught by all the people that we see listed in the credits. I want to see a few characters, a few different teachers who we can sprinkle in to add a little flavor to the cast and to challenge students. I mean, I know we're going to continue to meet more teachers as the season progresses. I hope that continues, because I don't want it to feel like we've got this great big massive set and it's full of nobody.
No one. There's no one there. Yeah. Does it make sense that the cadet master is teaching gym? Sure. But also, you can't hire a gym teacher. Like, it does. Yeah. We need more people.
Right. And to to some extent, Star Trek has always done this. They usually justify it, but it's always a justification that feels a lot like, we don't really have a good reason why the chief of station security is coming on this away mission, so here's a little 1 or 2 sentence excuse, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, we know what that is.
Yeah, Renee had a certain amount of episodes in his contract. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
But equally, there was recurring characters or even one-shot characters that would turn up to do a specific job for an episode or 2, and sometimes you would see them again, sometimes you wouldn't. Like some of Geordie's staff, for example, they were recurring. You always saw the same extras in engineering on Voyager because you had to, because they didn't have an infinite pool of extras, and you can't explain it away by, oh yeah, that person must have transferred off the ship for whatever reason.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. For reasons. Oh, we never saw that character that seemed like they were featured in this episode. They clearly wanted to make something of this character. Now there's just nobody anymore. They're gone.
You're referring to Sonia Gomez there, aren't you?
Sure are. Sure am.
Well, she spilled hot chocolate on Picard, and he got rid of her very quickly after that. Yeah. That's easily
back in a short trek.
No, she came back in Lower Decks.
We just saw her in Lower
Decks. I feel like there was someone who came back in Short Treks that I can't remember now.
That's funny you brought her up.
Yeah, that's exactly who I had in mind. So on this debate plotline, as the Klingon crisis emerges, the topic for this debate class becomes kind of what should the Starfleet and the Federation do about the Klingon refugee crisis. Essentially, it's becoming kind of untenable, and this is now, it's clearly being painted that this is now becoming like a species that's on the brink potentially of extinction, and it's a very potent topic for conversation and debate. And most of this class sort of starts to revolve around the core debate between Jaden and Caleb about whether or not the Federation should offer aid and assistance and rescue, essentially, to the Klingons, when nothing about who the Klingons are as a people will allow that to happen. And it would essentially require the cultural erasure of Klingon-ness to accept any kind of charity like this. And so there's a thorny Star Trek issue at the core of this episode, and we see it literally debated by these two characters, but also argued in the B story by Ake with this former acquaintance of hers. How did you guys feel about Ake's little B story, her kind of back channel diplomacy in this week's episode?
Well, my first thought that I wrote down was that it's kind of horrifying to think that all your hookups are in your personal files for other people to read.
I was like, really?
Romance novels? Yeah, he's like, I've been reading your files.
Kind of thought personal logs.
She would have had to apply for interspecies mating privileges from our chief medical officer, I guess, because that's a thing in Star Trek sometimes.
It is not.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
When the plot demands it.
Oh,
if you're a print off Riker's file, it would, it'd fill a room.
Please.
Riker's file is just sticky.
Oh.
Even if it's digital, it's somehow just sticky.
No one opens it.
Oh my god. Yeah, but that felt gross. But it was fun to see the scene because you have to put it like I always feel like I approach these things very emotionally all the time, and to put myself in his point of view as far as this person looks exactly the same as when I encountered them a very long time ago, and I have changed so much. That was a really interesting way to view the scene, as far as I was with this person when I was a young man, and now I am an old man, and she looks exactly the same, but they still fell back into that rhythm where they're drinking and throwing things in the fireplace and everything. I thought it was a really fun scene, but it was a really interesting story concept to wrap my brain around.
Yeah, Craig, did you get the actual name of this guy? Because I tried re-listening to Vance say it a few times. I couldn't get it.
I believe it was Obel.
Obel. Okay.
Yeah,
I
played
thought
by
so
David
too, but
Keeley.
I thought a really fun Klingon performance. I really enjoyed their dynamic and chemistry. They felt believably like old acquaintances / lovers, and I thought that this B storyline with the two of them was just the kind of stuff that I want to see out of modern storytelling in Star Trek. I think that this was a scene that felt very contemporary while also feeling like it belonged in this universe, and that's what I want tonally from the scenes in new Star Trek. So I liked their dynamic and their interplay quite a bit. How about you, Craig?
It summarizes the central tension of the debate at hand as well. The idea of Klingons won't accept help, so therefore they would rather die than accept charity from anyone, especially the Federation. Excuse me. And I like the idea of Obel being a bit more pragmatic than most of his peers sitting on the Klingon Council, but at the same time he knows that even though he would like to accept the offer of a planet, the others won't go for it because they're not as pragmatic as he is by implication. And when I was watching this episode, I was thinking, it's a shame that we're so many centuries later, but so little has changed in a lot of ways. The Betazoids are about the same as we would expect them to be based on our experience of previous Star Trek. And then we have the Navarre, who are supposedly the Vulcan and Romulans combined, but they're essentially just the Vulcans, aren't they? There's no real difference there. And then the Klingons are exactly the same as they were. But I like that this episode plays with that in some ways. It's this culture that stays fixed on being a warrior culture, so it never really evolves, which means that every few centuries they just face extinction. I was reminded of Star Trek 6 when watching this episode, because that deals with the exact same problem. There's a catastrophic accident on it was Praxis, which is a moon orbiting right. Kronos, and the Klingon Empire has 50 years of life left because they won't free themselves from that warrior culture. The same thing's happened here, so basically the burn must have blown up Praxis again or something, and destroyed everything that they have resource-wise.
Kind of given to understand that essentially their homeworld is Kronos is gone, or it's not livable
it's not
anymore.
there anymore. Yeah,
it's something terrible befell that planet, and now they've just they call it a diaspora. Like they've lost their homeland, they've been scattered to the winds, and that does give you a compelling opportunity for storytelling. I think that they're sort of explaining away, I think, Craig, your issue as well. After this catastrophe, they withdrew, just like the Betas. They withdrew. So many of these cultures, in the face of this catastrophe, withdraw and become more tribal and more insular. And this show, New Trek broadly, but I think this show specifically, is interested in conversations about how do we open up those clasped hands, and how do we reach out to people with profound cultural differences and find a way forward that works for everybody, and that in this case prevents extinction, or in the real world perhaps prevents genocide. These are real world analogs to the kinds of conversation that the show is having, and I think that is ultimately always in Star Trek's strength.
Yeah, I agree.
And I don't think this show is necessarily chasing reinvention either. It's not trying to reinvent the Star Trek wheel. What it's doing is it's trying to give you a different perspective on these things. So in this case, we're getting a look at Klingon culture from a perspective we haven't seen before. And we're exploring the notion of, well, what does the species do when they are facing extinction and when they don't have a chancellor like Gorkon that can really push for an alliance between them and their greatest enemy? Whereas what you have here is you've got a wounded people who are just too proud to accept the help they need and would rather die than be accept charity from anybody, which is obviously not a great thing, but you can understand how that pride would influence that that level of what some would call foolishness.
Yeah, I like that they didn't shy away from using diaspora as a term and to describe it, because I love when Star Trek, but like science fiction, makes us understand or empathize with our own world better. I think this episode is a great example of that. Like this, that is a real world term that people might hear but not really understand what it means. So to explain it in this way, as these people have lost their home, how do we help them when they don't want to be helped? Was just a great way to just engender compassion and understanding. And it was just explained really, really concisely, beautifully.
Yeah, and the flip side of that works too, where the concept of a diaspora is something that someone might recognize from the real world, and they watch this show and they go, oh, this show is reflecting back an experience that I can recognize. And is showing it through a lens that allows me to connect with these characters who are going through this experience because I know what that's like, or I've heard of what that's like.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. Again, it's a different perspective on something familiar.
How did we feel about how the debates themselves went? Like, do we think this was ultimately an effective way of getting deeper into these characters and into this issue, or was the structure of the debate more of an artificial barrier to exploration?
I do think it worked. I think that it allowed the arguments to be laid out, like I say, somewhat. It's somewhat contrived in the way that it's a debate and it's supposed to be contrived, but also it lets the arguments come out clearly and succinctly, and then you get that point where Jaden gets too emotionally involved in the debate and it goes off the rails anyway. So I think you get all of that. You get the emotional side of it, but you also get the very factual side of it. And I love that Caleb is this character that is pretty much good at everything, because he has to be good at everything, otherwise he wouldn't have lived this long. And the way that he sees debate as another form of combat, the person with the most knowledge wins. So he's the one that he's learned all the dates, he's learned all the regulations, and he's able to interpret them in order to structure his argument. So whenever he's debating someone, he destroys them. Even the people that are also good at it, because he's just better. He knows everything in a more clear way that he's very good at interpreting it. So it's very good that way. And I like that he honors Jaden's wishes by not going easy on him as well. He really gives him it in the debate scenario. So I think the debate is a very good device here, and it doesn't remove the emotion from the scenario as well.
No, in fact, that's sort of ultimately, at the end, one of the points that Jaden kind of conveys is you aren't actually connected to any of the things you're saying. You're just trying to win this battle. And none of the consequences of the argument, like you could just as easily be arguing the other side. It doesn't matter to you. This matters to me. It matters to my people. It has real consequence. And so I'm not, playing a game. I'm trying to represent as best I can what I believe is the standpoint of Klingons as a whole, of what it means to be a Klingon. I'm a representative of that as a concept here. And for you to debate, it's like you're trying to debate away my existence. And that's something that I'm not going to allow. And so I think you're right, Craig. I think that despite the artifice of the debate structure, this episode functions similarly to how a lot of courtroom episodes in classic Trek function, where you have characters able to kind of state and debate a premise and, develop a thesis and make an argument to the audience. And I think that this follows in the tradition of that quite well. I think another recent good example of that would be in season 2 of Strange New Worlds, when we have that early episode where Una is defending her place in Starfleet, and like these kinds of episodes can seem a little, I think, dry or a little artificial to some people, but I'm really compelled by, hello, I used to be in the debate club. I like an argument. So I found all of this stuff a compelling way of exploring these issues and fitting, again, with the setting of a school.
Yeah. I also liked that there was a micro level version of the issue when Caleb offered to partner up, and Jaden took that as, you're offering charity and I'm not taking it.
Yes.
He's doing exactly what his people are doing, refusing help.
Exactly. Ian, when you were making your very eloquent point, it reminded me of a quote that I have saved from a mental health account that I follow called Drop the Stones. And the quote is, when you debate a person about something that affects them more than it affects you, remember that it will take a much greater emotional toll on them than on you. For you, it may feel like an academic exercise, but for them, it feels like revealing their pain only to have you dismiss their experience and sometimes their humanity. And the fact that you might remain more calm under these circumstances is a consequence of your privilege, not increased objectivity on your part. And honestly, I think the debate structure in this perfectly illuminates that quote. That's exactly what was happening.
Right. And as Jaden does get emotionally overwhelmed and withdraw from the stage, he has the opportunity, really the first one that we've seen so far, and they call this out in the scene itself, an opportunity to talk and have a really in-depth conversation with First Officer Tok. And she has this really good heart-to-heart with Jaden in not her capacity as, drill sergeant and first officer at the school and on the ship, but as an elder Klingon. She's half Klingon, so she is in a position of potential mentorship, and she expresses regret at not having stepped up into that role sooner. But seeing how this debate has affected Jaden gives her the impetus to step up and to step in at this point in the story and say, I have insight that you may be lacking. And this scene is about him unpacking his background, his family history. We've seen flashes of throughout the story, and as he recounts what is to him a haunting and traumatizing memory of his refusal to embrace the way of the warrior in the way that he feels his father wants, he thinks has caused his father to become so enraged that he misses a shot during a hunt, and that he storms away, and his family leaves him behind on this planet, and his only refuge is to seek out the Federation and to join Starfleet Academy. We don't really get to see sort of the how he got from abandoned on who knows what planet to I'm in Starfleet Academy, but he figured it out. Maybe we'll learn more about that in the future. And for him, it's this very, very traumatic memory, and she's able to recontextualize what happened for him because of her experience with Klingon culture and with being a Klingon. And it's really impactful for Jaden, and he is given new understanding about what actually is motivating the Klingon heart and Klingon actions. And there's a potential solution here that isn't quite charity, but it will allow the Federation to give this planet that they've discovered, Fawn Alpha, which has a climate very similar to Konosh, and they will give it over to they've been offering it to the Klingons, and Jaden has come up with this concept, which, you kind of sort of, if you know Klingons pretty well, you kind of figure that this is probably the solution they're going to come up with. But they come up with this mock fight solution where the Klingons engage the Federation in battle around the planet, and upon winning the battle, they take possession of the planet in the name of the Klingon Empire. And we're just all it's ceremonial almost. It's almost a way of honoring the concept of Klingon honor without any blood having been shed, and we can all celebrate that no blood was shed. And this is the thing that I was going to say to what you mentioned, Craig, earlier about things not having changed so much with the culture. I think this is the one element that I think points to Klingons have evolved somewhat, at least, because there's no way that they would have accepted a battle as bloodless as this one in the past. I think you're given clear enough evidence of Klingon bloodthirst in past iterations of Star Trek that they would have needed death to satisfy their honor, and they're willing to accept a bloodless flag football version of combat, and everyone sort of goes along with it, and I think that's great. I think it's a good solution that makes sense. I think it's just it's a little surprising, I guess, that they went so bloodless and tame with the fight. I was expecting there to be a little bit more, but again, I just took it as, well, this is where the Klingons of this day are. Like, I'm expecting that because of what I've seen of them 800 years in the past. And now they're a different people, recognizable in many ways, but this is what they're willing to do now.
I think conceptually the idea of it can't be a gift, it has to be conquest. That's what the Klingons need in order to accept this thing that we're offering them, is fine. I think it's conceptually good. But I think the execution was a bit lacking, because we've spent the whole episode talking about how Klingons are too proud, they're not going to go for this. Right. And then suddenly they do. And I get why Obel is happy with this mock fight, this clearly staged thing. But there must be the other heads of houses, the other commanders on those ships thinking, this was the easiest fight we have ever been in. This isn't good enough. They clearly surrender. They're clearly insulting us by pretending that we won this fight that lasted 30 seconds. Yes. There's no way we won this easily. So that's one of the things where it's, yes, the solution makes sense to an extent, but I think you needed more in order to make it believable that the Klingons would accept it.
I think another beat or two of the fight would have been totally fine. I do.
At least some sparks coming from the ceiling, just some damage happened.
Especially someone needs a bump on the noggin.
Someone gets knocked over. At least we have a broken leg. Yeah.
We gotta have a boo boo. We gotta have a boo boo for the dermal regenerator to fix. But especially on rewatch, I told myself, I think that, I think it's just another illustration of just how desperate things have gotten for them. Like, I think that there's, even amongst, no matter how honor-driven and proud these people are, I think that on some fundamental level, there is some recognition of, if we don't do this, this is it. If we don't accept this, this will be it for us. And I'm glad that they chose not to go extinct.
Agreed. The survivor instinct kicked in.
Yeah. And the concept of honouring Klingon culture was really interestingly explored by Jaden, who pointed out that the Federation are happy to accept new members, but do they have to homogenize themselves? Do they have to remove everything that makes them unique in order to fit under Federation ideals? And the Klingons are not willing to do that. That's why they never actually joined the Federation. It was Chancellor Gorkon's daughter that said, the Federation is nothing but a Homo sapiens only club. And that attitude has persisted. Not even Martok wanted to join the Federation. He was, he was the most pally with the Federation that a Klingon has ever been. He was really, he really believed in that. He let Worf be the ambassador for 5 minutes before he went back to the Enterprise for reasons that are never actually explored, other than we need Worf and Nemesis. But he gave up that job pretty quickly, it seems. He didn't like it or whatever. Yeah. It's neither here nor there. But I like that idea of the Federation unwittingly causes cultures to diminish themselves in order to be members of them. And I don't think it's done intentionally, but I think it just happens as a natural blending process. I mean, we have people in the UK that swear blind that they voted to leave the European Union so that they could be British again. And, well, what was stopping you from being British, whatever that means to you, under the European Union? Well, you've got it now. You get to you get to wait in line for a long time at customs. Congratulations. You get to, passport control takes 3 times as long as it used to. So fantastic. Well done. You've certainly reclaimed your sovereignty. But you can understand why people from the outside looking in would maybe think that way. And Jaden pointing out that he's a Klingon at the Academy on his own terms, rather than being swallowed up by what the Federation represents. He's like an anomaly that gets to stand out. And I find Jaden interesting, as opposed to Worf, because Worf is outside of Klingon society looking in, somewhat idolizing it, because he wasn't really a part of it, whereas Jaden is on the inside looking out. So he understands what they stand for, and then he sees the Federation from outside of that perspective.
Yeah, they're both these interesting examples of as far as we know. I mean, we don't know about the history between Voyager and now, but they feel like they're the only two Klingons who've ever been in Starfleet. Certainly the only two that we've seen full Klingons. I know that obviously we have half Klingons too, but the two like full Klingons for whom like being a Klingon is a very, very serious core part of their identity, and they go about it in very different ways. And Worf admittedly is the example of like he's the adoptive son of people from a completely different culture, and so like you said, from him the perspective is from kind of like an outsider, and we see a lot of overcompensation over the course of his character's arc because
he tries to be the ultimate Klingon. Yeah,
he tries to be the ultimate Klingon because he grew up with humans, and he's gonna demonstrate that he is actually a full fucking Klingon, and that's a very important part of his character. And Jaden is coming from a different perspective, which is so interesting because he is someone who is interested in all of these things that are considered not very Klingon, and that is how he becomes. That is how he identifies his Klingonness. Is he says it in the first episode. Like he yearns for life. That's the combat he wishes to engage in. Is how do I how do I apply the warrior ethos to my pursuit of the preservation and defense of living things and of life itself? And I think that's a really interesting, different perspective to approach this issue from. And I think so far, at least, I feel the show is, through this episode, tackling it in a pretty compelling way. I hope that it continues to organically unfold as bits of like character detail that unfold. I don't expect we'll get this season another full-blown Jaden focused episode. I think they're probably going to do like one per each of these main characters, I suspect. But I hope they continue to weave this issue for him through the rest of the series and have it not just be confined to this week, because it was such a compelling part of Worf's character journey. I think it can really be a compelling part of Jaden's.
Yeah, and the reveal that his father actually accepted him, even though it looked like he didn't, was really interesting. It's this. Yeah. It's very much the same as what the heads of houses are doing in this scenario. It's we really want to take this planet, but we can't be seen to be wanting to take this planet. So I can't be seen by society to be approving of your life choice, but I do approve of it. It's that level of, instinctive understanding that you need Klingons like Jaden, otherwise the species will not survive, because they can't all be warriors. You do need the medical side of it. You do need engineers. You need all these dishonorable jobs in order to get society working. But also, you're going to look down at those people because they're not warriors. That's just the way it is. And so missing the shot, doing that on purpose, seeming like you've shamed the family, when in fact it's, no, I'm honoring your choice by letting you go, is really interesting. And then you've got the whole, we're not taking charity in terms of the Federation medical technology, even though it could save my son's life. It's nonsense like that, or what people would see as nonsense. But it's actually very important cultural pride. And so I loved those flashbacks. I thought they were very enlightening.
Yes, I love the flashbacks. I loved how they were engineered in that we were getting just little drips of the story, but then the payoff, how it all made sense in the end. And Ian, I don't know if you had the same feelings that I had. So no spoilers for what's coming up in the Movieversaries feed, but this is the second older brother, younger brother pairing that you and I have discussed lately, and what it feels like when you lose that comforting and, enabling older brother role in your life, how hopeless it feels and how lost you feel. Like, I really felt that in Jaden's character.
Caleb is, I think, doing what I think a lot of compassionate people would want to do in these circumstances, and he's trying to find common ground, and he's trying to say, like, in a well-meaning way, like, there are all these ways in which we are similar, like, we're here together, like, we should be on the same side, like, we should be more brotherly, and that really sets off Jaden's,
you
like,
are not
you're
my
not my
brother.
brother. Had a brother, he died.
Yeah.
He's dead. And Caleb obviously, like, doesn't know any of this background yet, and so he's not even able to be as sensitive to that particular concern as he otherwise might be. But it really contextualized Jaden's response of, you're not my brother, like, stop trying to be my brother. I had a brother. And I think, he comes around at the end, and I think I think he and Caleb come around to a better understanding of each other at the end, and will continue to through the show. But I thought that his dynamic with his brother was really moving, and I loved how his brother was the open version of the acceptance that his father apparently had but couldn't express in a healthy way. His brother was, by contrast, very open and very curious, and it's heartbreaking that he loses that kind of advocate in his life that his brother would have continued to be if he had lived. So I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Say that again?
He encourages Jaden.
Big time.
Yeah.
With his last breath.
Yeah. And Caleb reaching for Jaden earlier in the episode by saying, we're both orphans. We both don't have anything to go back to. That's why I think we'd be good friends. And Jaden eventually admits that he sees a lot of his brother in Caleb. Why do I keep pronouncing Caleb? It's because I'm saying Jaden and then Caleb. I'm putting an apostrophe in there somewhere where I shouldn't be. And then Caleb opens up about the fact that he also treats people with hostility, and he's trying to change that, and they both agree that, well, we shouldn't forget our past, but we should also not let them define us. So let's move forward and just be friends. And listen to this academy recruitment ball that I found.
That quote was amazing. Not to let go of the past, but to let the present in. I loved that.
Jaden at the end is presented by Obel with this bow that's like a ceremonial weapon, and traditionally in Star Trek, we've seen Klingons like blades. It's all about blades of different kinds. I don't think we've ever seen a single Klingon bow and arrow depicted. And I don't know whether you had a read on that at all, Craig, whether you thought there was any significance to that.
I think it's just an ancient ranged weapon, and they would exist, wouldn't they? They wouldn't just use blades, and obviously they have disruptors now, so they don't need bows and arrows anymore. They never let go of their bat'leth, so they like to go into battle with their swords and get right in the thick of it. But them having bows and arrows they use for like rites of passage and stuff like that made perfect sense to me. I think that ranged weapons would make sense at any time, and you wouldn't be able to shoot a bird down with your bat'leth, would you? Not easily.
No.
Anyway.
And I think that ties into and I may be overthinking this, my slight read on this is that the priority of the Klingons has shifted a bit, and the bow is much more a weapon of hunting and survival, and ranged combat, not getting in close, like increasing like your own survival and survivability when you're in a fighting situation. I thought perhaps it was indicative of more of a hunting and survival kind of mindset that's pervading Klingon culture post-burn, rather than the close-in combat bladed warrior's weapon of years past. But I may be overthinking it, but on seeing it, I thought, I wonder if that's something they're trying to indicate, that it is another subtle indication that the priorities of the Klingons have shifted somewhat.
I think it could be a metaphor for that, but it's just a history thing, isn't it? They're just adding things to history, as in they did have ranged weapons at some point, because obviously if that was, they switched to bows and arrows after the burn, then that wouldn't make a lot of sense, because they could still use their disruptors as long range things. But yeah, it makes sense that they would use bows and arrows in Kaelis's time, or Kaelish as we now pronounce it.
Kaelish.
When did the sh sound come into the Klingon pronunciation?
Shh, don't question it.
Yeah. I don't mind. It's just I've noticed that they always there was always a hard S back in the day, wasn't it?
Yeah. All right. What else do we want to talk about this week? Any other significant point either of you wanted to make about what we saw this week on Starfleet Academy?
It was quite a simple episode. It wasn't. There wasn't a lot of room for just meandering. It was very focused on its main topic. So it was Jaden's episode, and then you had a bit of Caleb in there. I've said this on every episode I've been on, and perhaps episodes that you haven't heard yet, but it's every episode we need to check in on what Caleb's doing. So even though he's not always the main character, he is still the main character. You have to get some kind of sense of what he's up to in every single episode. And he has an important role in this one in terms of as Jaden's opponent that pushes him to frame the argument in a way that will make people actually listen. I liked the scene with Remy as well, with the battle breathing. I think that was really good. I think we're getting a strong sense of Remy is more than he seemed in the first couple of episodes. And that way that he comforts Jaden by giving him that confidence, by showing him how to regulate his breathing so he doesn't get overwhelmed. I think that was very good. And when he sits in the crowd, he does the gesture as well to calm him down. That's really good.
Yeah.
I loved that. Yeah, everybody knows.
Yeah, that's a good point. That is,
you gotta do that for
nice,
your panic attacks. Yeah.
Yeah, a nice little note that Remy was able to hit this week. So I hope that's indicative of what they're able to do with the show, where you get, a scene or two with one of the other ensemble to flesh them out a little bit more and have them bounce off of whoever happens to be the main focus character in this week's episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
And we've definitely went fully back to old Klingon makeup, or old style Klingon makeup, haven't we?
We've really gone back, haven't we?
As opposed to the Discovery departure, which I was never had a problem with.
We don't talk about those times.
I never had a problem with it, really. I just,
I didn't either. I it was obvious they wanted to do something very different, largely for the sake of doing something very different. It was a little weird given the era in which they were setting the show, but whatever.
Yeah. One thing I did have a problem with in Discovery was the Klingon ship designs. They all sucked. They didn't look Klingon at all.
They were bad. They were not good.
But we had some classic Klingon design sensibilities in the ships that we saw at the end.
Yeah.
Or towards the end, very briefly.
Yeah.
And obviously we had the Klingon theme for a few seconds.
Yeah.
Yes, that's always fun to hear. I love that theme.
Yeah. And Vance handling Federation policy once again.
Yeah. Again, the cast is just only so big, and I guess
this is a payroll issue.
Vance's purview now, I guess.
Surprised they don't have him teaching a class coming in by hologram, because he can't actually ever physically be anywhere.
I'm sure it's coming.
I mean, he was the one conducting the diplomatic negotiations for some reason in episode 2. Why isn't he teaching like a diplomacy class or something?
Yeah.
Or this class.
Yeah. Or this class, yes.
I always find it amusing that they waste money on visual effects by just having the holograms flicker every now and again, just to remind you that they're holograms.
Just to let you know.
So in this era of like instant transport, you can't just have him pop into the scene and then just be in the scene and then pop out. You do that with all these other characters, but no, for him, he has to be a glitchy hologram. Why are they glitchy? It's the 32nd century. What are you doing?
Yeah, exactly.
The Doctor doesn't glitch.
No.
No,
no hologram glitches except for this fucking thing.
Except this guy.
It's such a stupid nitpick, but it's just like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Although the Doctor is actually a full hologram, whereas Vance's hologram is a representation of a real person. So it's like he's transmitting
it's different.
somewhere. Yeah, slightly
It's different.
Just a little.
The Doctor does seem to be installed on the Athena, though. He doesn't have his mobile emitter anymore. He just, because you see him disappearing and reappearing sometimes.
I think, I think what we are meant to infer is that basically all of these ships are like holo emitters throughout.
Yeah.
Because so many of the support staff seem to be holograms, and they mentioned very briefly, I think, in Disco Season 3 that there was a ship that's like got an entirely holographic crew or something like that. Like, so my interpretation is just that the days of a wearable mobile emitter are largely gone unless he's on an away mission.
Yeah. Although he was able to transport himself around with his mobile emitter during Prodigy, which really annoyed me when he was on an away mission somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, how did you do that? Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
All right. Any other notes that we want to finish up on?
Sure. I have been listening to the coverage, of course, so I do agree with the points that have been brought up that we're getting these character episodes, but Caleb is like the glue. Like, he's always going to be around, and I don't mind because I actually really like this character. I think he's doing a really good job. He is distractingly handsome, which is an issue for me.
Yeah. So it's a bit distracting. He's a bit distractingly handsome, a bit distractingly buff, and a bit distractingly good at literally everything he tries.
Everything. Yes, 1,000%.
They need to like tone that down just a bit, I think.
Yeah, just slightly. Even when he's like covered in goop, I'm still like, good God. It's just an excuse to take his jacket off.
Cover me in goop.
Speaking of, well, that's that.
Andy has those bad boy edges. That means that people want to fix him as well.
Exactly.
He has everything.
But Daddy, I love him. Yeah, exactly. Speaking of jackets, I want a calico jacket so bad. I love those. That's maybe my favorite costume on the show. They're awesome. And once again, if Andy Williams was here, he would be saying, of course, but I am going to bring up the fact that I think they're doing a very good job at creating a little found family here. And I like that they ended the episode with the orb saying, if you're looking for us, we're looking for you, like we heard earlier when he first turned it on with his brother. Because I think these people were all looking for something, and they're going to find it with each other. Found family, guys. You know it's my favorite.
That's modern Star Trek completely, though. Starfleet isn't a workplace that people can work in. It's more of a way station for
lost
people
souls.
who are lost.
It's the lost soul finding place, which I'm totally into because, as I discussed at the top of this, I view things emotionally always, and this makes my emotional bones happy.
I think as a found family repository makes more sense in this show than it does necessarily in, say, Strange New Worlds, where not everybody needs to have come there from some personal tragedy in their past. It can just be, well, Starfleet Academy seemed like the place to go, and I went there, and now I'm on this ship.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. You can have people from all different backgrounds, all different reasons for being there, and explore that. And it's a little harder to do that on a ship where you have rigidly established roles and people with varying levels of experience. Like these are all blank slates. These are all young adults figuring it out for the first time, which is a very different perspective than we usually get, where at least the majority of our main cast are like sober, experienced professionals.
Yeah. But in the case of, say, Strange New Worlds, there might be people that are only on the Enterprise for a couple of months. It would happen in TNG all the time, where they dock at a starbase, people go off and people come on, moving between assignments. It's just the way that, well, quasi-military structures work, doesn't it? You do a tour for a bit, and then you move on and go somewhere else. Especially if you're like a research scientist.
Stuck here for 4 years, or however long. How long does Starfleet Academy take? Do they ever say?
They haven't said yet.
Okay. As many seasons as they'll let us.
Yeah.
I think back in the TNG era, it was effectively comparable to whatever the American college system would have been. You study for however many years, but
4 to 6 years.
4 to,
okay.
depending. Yeah. But I mean, these are also, adolescents, young adults, etc. They don't have to have crazy, tragic backstories. We just need like the parent neglect and such. And that's enough for them to have to overcome and find that, this is the time in your life where you are moving away from your parents and finding that support structure and your most like favorite and important people in your friends.
Yeah. And setting it in this era does give them an excuse to do that, to have people be estranged and so on. If it had been, much as I would have wanted a Starfleet Academy show set in, say, the 23rd or 24th century, it would have been harder to have a group of people that all had fractured family dynamics or came from some kind of, some kind of refugee status or whatever. I think that the way they've done it here, it fits the setup. Post-burn world, you're going to have people that are more spread out and disparate, and Starfleet is giving them that opportunity to make something of themselves. So I think it's working in line with the setup. And I'm getting more out of the burn in this show than I ever did in Discovery. They're doing much more with it than they ever did in Discovery.
Yes, they are. I think they deserve credit for that.
Yeah, they're giving us a personal touch on it, whereas the Discovery largely didn't, because you didn't have any characters that were largely affected by it. Yeah. So it was one of those distant, intangible things that you didn't really have to think too much about. But I kept criticizing Discovery for not giving me a strong sense of how the galaxy's working, whereas Academy, 4 episodes in, has already given me more of a sense of how things work out there than Discovery did, which is crazy when you think about it.
Yeah.
That is another good point, and yes, that is crazy.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else? Any other last notes?
I think I covered the main things.
Yeah, I think that's it for me too. All right, you guys want to plug your socials? Craig, start with you.
Okay. Yeah, I can be found mainly on Kneel Before Blog, so kneelbeforeblog.co.uk. I'm reviewing every episode of Starfleet Academy, so you can read 2,000 plus word reviews where I say things similar to what I say here, and perhaps some things a bit different. Who knows? You'll know once you read it. So it can be found there. I also have an attached podcast called Kneel Before Pod, where we do in-depth discussions about nerdy things, the odd interview, and a monthly news podcast. So there's plenty on there that you can listen to. Once again, very long-form stuff. So if you're into long-form, listen there. And I'm also on here, We Are Starfleet. You can find me here. Well, actually on most of this season so far.
We would have it no other way.
You can find it on all the socials under Kneel Before Blog, by the way. Just type it in, you'll find it.
How about you, Vi?
Best place is always my Linktree. It's linktr.ee/violet.h.310. And on there you will find links to all of the podcasts I guest on, like this one. Thanks for having me, guys. I'm always happy to talk Star Trek. And also the show that I co-host with you in, Movieversaries, over at Punch and Pie Media, where we celebrate and sometimes reevaluate films that are having a significant anniversary. And here at Film Stories, I'm the co-host of Three Circles, a Disney podcast.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both for joining me today.
Thank you.
What do you do,
Ian?
I don't do anything.
You do what?
I'm going to put all your social stuff in the notes, and you guys can also find me on other shows such as Illumination Above All, which is a show talking about the Apple TV show Severance. You can find me on Collector's Commentary, which is a podcast that focuses on physical media, and on Movieversaries, which celebrates films on basically a 10-year increment university 10-year increment anniversary, and Violet is one of the co-hosts on that, and Craig has also guested on that show, so you can hear me and my dulcet tones on any of those podcasts. Thank you for joining us on another episode of We Are Starfleet. We'll see you again next week for our episode on Series Acclamation Mill.